Namaste. Today we are going to discuss about the production function. Now this is going to be one among the supply theory, right? The producers, even as they are going to undertake a certain behavior, while they are going to produce and supply the products and services, quite a number of concepts as part of class 11 microeconomics you will be learning. The previous concept that you have learned is the consumer equilibrium theory, how the consumers behave, how they put up a demand, how to measure the demand, elasticity of demand. The entire consumer behavior theory is given to you and you might have understood. So we are going to start up with the producer behavior theories, and as a small portion under that we would be discussing about the production function. So production function, the very word should tell you that it refers to the technical relationship that exists between the input and the output. What is production? Production is after all converting the inputs into the output. Yeah. So the technical relationship that exists between the input and the output is what is a production function. So in micro again, short run. The short run is given more importance and the short run theories are taught to you. Yeah. But then again, long run is equally important, but as part of your curriculum, we would be taking up only the short run production function and discussing more about it. Yes. So, on to the time period, short time period and long time period. Yes. So, what is the short time period? Short time period is a time period wherein there are going to be some factor inputs that can be changed. Yes. Now, what did we understand as production function? It refers to the technical relationship or the physical relationship that exists between the input and the output. Yes. And we are trying to find out what is the short term. What does the short term refer to? Yeah. With reference to the production function, in the short term, if we discuss about the inputs, then short term is a time period where there are going to be two different kinds of inputs. Yes. One is going to be the set of variable inputs and the other is the fixed inputs. Now generally when we say inputs, what are the inputs? You might have understood about the factor and the non-factor inputs. Alright? What are the factor inputs again? You might have done it in your class 9 and 10, right? Let's recollect that quickly. Land, labor, capital and organization. Yes, land, labor, capital and entrepreneurship or organization, they are the four factors of production. Apart from these factor inputs, n number of non-factor inputs are also going to be required for the process of production. What are they? Raw materials. Yes, definitely for the production process, raw materials will be required, right? And then transportation, power, communication. Yes, all these could be the non-factor inputs required for the process of production. Yeah. So, quite a number of factor and non-factor inputs are going to be required for the process of production, and in the short run, there is going to be requirement of the variable and the fixed inputs. So, what are these variable inputs and fixed inputs? Let's see that. Now, when I say variable inputs, with what are they going to vary? With what are they going to vary? Yes? Now, again, production function, what did we say? Production function is going to be the technical relationship between the input and the output. The term I refers to the inputs. Yeah, what are the inputs? Just now we saw it could be the factor inputs and the non-factor inputs. Yes. Then output. Output is referred by the term Q. In some books, of course, you would see the output to be referred to as O. Yes, but I and Q, I and O, whatever it is, production function, it refers to the technical relationship between the input and output. For yet another time, I am repeating the same. Yes, yes. Now, in the short term, the variable inputs, they are going to vary with the level of output. Yes, to increase the output, the level of input should be increased. That is, to produce more and more and more, the producer has to hire more and more inputs. So, when the inputs are going to vary with the level of output, we simply call them variable inputs. Yes. So, in the short run, there are some inputs that can be varied. Think about it. Can we buy more raw materials? Can we hire more laborers if we are going to be entrepreneurs? Yes, I think that's possible in the short run, which is normally a day or a week or even, let's say, a month. During that time, in case the output has to be increased, more raw materials, more laborers, and more power, some such inputs can be increased. So that will help us to increase the output. So, variable inputs are those inputs that are varied along with the output. In order to increase the output, when the entrepreneur is going to hire more inputs, then those are the variable inputs in the process of production. Yes? Now again, think of the time period. If it's going to be a week or a month or so, not all the inputs can be increased. Yeah? Overnight, can we just go and acquire land, set up an installation, and then increase output? No, isn't it? That's going to take time. Capital has to be planned, arranged, acquired, and then maybe some installations or acquisition of land or any kind of expansion, diversification that could happen. That's going to take time. So, there are some inputs which cannot be increased in the short term, like land and other fixed inputs that are required by the firm, isn't it? Yeah. So, in the short term, there is going to be presence of two kinds of inputs. One is the variable input, yes, and the other one is going to be the fixed input. So, fixed inputs are those which remain fixed. Yes, they remain fixed. Fixed inputs, they remain fixed or they remain constant, and there could be a change in the level of output. That is, as the output increases, the set of inputs that remain fixed, they are called as fixed inputs. Yes. So, in the short run, there is going to be the presence of variable inputs and fixed inputs, or we can even say short time period is a time period during which presence of two kinds of inputs are going to be there for the production process. Yes. So, on the basis of what are we defining the time period out here? On the basis of the inputs, and that is the variable as well as the fixed inputs. We are trying to define the time period out here. Right? Now, just as we have the short term, we also have the long term. So, long term is a time period wherein all the inputs are going to become variable. Yes? Long time period is a time period during which all the inputs are going to become variable. Yeah, just now we were discussing about land and then installation. Yes, they can be arranged for in the long term. Enough planning can be done, enough capital can be accumulated so that the production unit can expand, diversify, purchase more of the inputs. All the inputs become variable in the long time period. So, there is going to be only presence of one kind of input, that is a variable input, right? So, every increase in the output is going to happen with an increase in the input. Every output increase is going to happen with an increase in the input. Yes, so that means only variable inputs are going to be there in the long time period. Yes, yeah, right. Now, coming back to the short term period, we have understood that there is going to be presence of the variable inputs and the fixed inputs. Yeah. So, let us see the other names of the short term production function. Now, you've got to understand that in the short term period, there could be a certain type of production happening, and in the long term, yet another type of production might be happening. That is the relationship between the input and output. It varies in the short time period and in the long time period. So, we should understand that in the short term, the production function could be different from that of the long term production function. Yes. So, the short run production function is what we are going to understand. The short run production function is also known as the law of variable proportions. The short run production function is also known as the law of variable proportions. Now, why is that so? Why is that so? Yeah. Input and output, the technical relationship between the input and output, that is what we are trying to discuss out here. Yeah. So, land, labor, capital and organization, these are the 4 factor inputs, and there are going to be a number of non-factor inputs. In reality, of course, all of these are going to be involved in the process of production. Everything is going to be changed in some percentage, and as a result of that, the output is going to change. But then, for a basic model in microeconomics, it becomes too difficult for you to have so many variables, right? When so many variables are going to be studied simultaneously, then how does the output change? It will become very complex for you to arrive at a model or a theory. So, ceteris paribus. Come on, ceteris paribus has been given to you even in your demand chapter and your initial chapters, right? All other things remaining the same. Ceteris paribus. We are going to look into the relationship between just few inputs and the output. In this case, if it's going to be the short run, just the variable input, one variable input and the output. Yes, let me repeat. We are going to inquire upon the production function in the short time period as a relationship between the input and the output. So, we are going to take up one variable input and the way in which this variable input is going to change and the resultant change in the output. Yes? Yeah? So, let us take up one variable input. Now, whatever be the production activity, now production, you know that there are primary, secondary, tertiary sectors. There are 3 sectors where production might happen. Yes, agriculture and allied activities, they are categorized under primary sector. Yes, manufacturing, industries, secondary sector, tertiary sector, all the service-based activities. Whichever be the productive activity, there is going to be the operation of this LVP or the law of variable proportion, and the production function will be similar. Yes, and again the inputs, the factor inputs can be land, labor, capital and organization, and few more inputs, non-factor inputs. Yes, so for simplicity's sake, let's take up labor. Though there are so many more variable inputs that can be taken as example, without labor, not much can happen. Yes, so let's take up labor as one variable input. Fine, let's take up labor as one variable input, and let's take up capital. Fine, so labor and capital, even as they are going to be combined in the process of production, that is going to result in some specific amount of output. Yes, yeah, labor and capital combined together, that is going to result in a particular level of output Q. Yes, or rather, okay, I would say that output is a function of output is a function of the inputs, labor and capital. If this Q is going to be a certain level of production for which, let us say, labor and capital are going to be combined to reach on to the next level, Q1, to reach on to the next level, Q1, then the capital is going to remain constant, fine. The capital is going to remain constant. And what about labor? Labor is a variable input, right? Labor has to be increased. Initially, if it is going to be 1 unit of capital and 1 unit of labor, 1 unit of capital and 1 unit of labor that are going to be combined to give you a specific level of output Q to reach on to the next level of output Q1. Yes, given the fixed factor, that is capital is going to remain the same, 1 unit only, same 1 unit. The only option available to the entrepreneur is to increase the dosage of labor now. So maybe the next level, a higher level of production to reach that, yeah, labor has to be increased to the next level. Only then this becomes a possibility. Yes. So what about the next step? To reach Q2. Yeah. Again, same 1 unit of capital will only be available. Yes. But then you need to have 1 more unit of labor. Only then that becomes a possibility. Yes. So what's happening here? We start off with a 1:1 ratio to arrive at a certain level of output. Yes. And then to reach on to the next level of output Q1, it becomes 2:1. Yes. And then the third level, 3:1. In case we are going to try and reach to the third level, that probably will be possible only with 1 more unit of labor and then the same amount of capital. So what's happening? The ratio between the variable and the fixed inputs, it keeps varying. It keeps varying or keeps changing. Fine? And it is due to that 1 additional unit of variable input that there is going to be more and more output possible. Yes. So for the same reason, it is called as the law of variable proportions. By varying the proportion of the inputs, more and more output can be attained. So that's why it's called as the law of variable proportions. Also, yet another name for the short run production function is going to be the laws of returns to factor. Yes, why is it called as a law of returns to factor or laws of returns to factor? Because of that 1 additional variable input or factor, due to that 1 particular factor which can be varied in the short run, there is going to be more and more of output. So the returns or the additional output is due to that 1 particular factor that can be increased, which is a variable factor. So it is also called as a law of returns to factor. Yes? Yeah? So the short run production function, it is also called as a law of variable proportions. It is also called as a law of returns to factor. Which factor? The variable factor. Yes, those are the other 2 names for the short run production function. And let me repeat, short time period is a time period during which there is going to be presence of variable inputs and fixed inputs in the process of production. Yes, to increase the output more and more, variable inputs only can be hired and thereby additional output can be attained. Yes, so that is the short run production function during the short time period. What happens in the long time period? Very minimal input you will be getting in class 11 with respect to the long term. Fine. Now Now, long term or long time period is a time period where all the inputs become variable. That was given to you already. Yes? So, again, let's take up labor and capital only. Labor and capital, fine. If they are going to be made use of in the process of production, how would the production change? Whether it is going to be labor or whether it is going to be capital, all of them become variable, right? The time period is so large, so long, wherein all the inputs can be varied. Yes? So, let's say we start up with 1 unit of labor and 1 unit of capital to arrive at a specific level of output. Yes? Then to increase the output to the next level, to reach Q1, it's very much possible that labor as well as capital can be increased. Yes? Then, again, to reach the next level of production, there can be, once more of labor and more of capital engaged. So, you see that with every level of increased output that is brought out by more of both the inputs. Yes, all the inputs are going to become variable. So, more of labor, more of capital, that's going to result in more of the output. And look at the ratio. 1:1, 2:2, 3:3. Is that the same? Yeah. So, that's the reason why it is called as constant proportions, the law of constant proportions. Yes? And this law, let me just repeat it. This short term production function is called as the law of variable proportions, and it is also called as the law of returns to factor. Long term production function, yes, that is called as the law of returns to scale, or it is called as the law of constant proportions. So, constant proportions, this is what was given to you just now. 1:1, 2:2, it keeps increasing in a constant proportion. The inputs, they keep increasing in a constant proportion, isn't it? So, the same reason is called as the law of constant proportions. Yes? It's also called as the law of returns to scale. Now, what is that returns to scale? Returns to scale. Small scale, medium scale, large scale. Come on, all these terms are familiar to you, right? Let's understand. Maybe the entrepreneur is going to be a small scale producer. In the long term, when planning can be done, when more of capital can be acquired, expansion can be planned and carried out, small scale entrepreneurs are going to move up to medium scale or large scale. Yes? So, see, come on, installation is changing. Yeah? More of land is acquired. What do we understand by the increase in capital out there? The capital, it could be the financial capital, the fixed capital. In the long run, all that is going to increase. So, the scale of operation is going to become much, much higher. So, with an increased scale of operation, there is going to be an increased output possibility. Yes? With an increased scale of operation, an increased output possibility is there. So, long run is a time period when there is going to be much better output possibility due to much better inputs, or it is called as a law of returns to scale. Due to increase in scale of operation, there is going to be a better output possibility for the farm. Yes. So, these are the two kinds of production functions, the short run production function in the short term and the long run production function in the long term. Yes. So, we will discuss in detail about the law of variable proportions or the short run production function in the upcoming class. Namaste.